Varner. I sculpted the original turtle. This is the first turtle ever done. Wow. Our toy fair in 1987. And it kind of took off from there. And then Eddie and I, after the second series, sculpted pretty much all of the turtles, or most of the turtles. We did most of the turtles and the good guys, and Scott Hensey did the more, the bad guys, and how would you describe
the more creature-like, kind of organic characters.
Yeah.
Scott would do Anaglyph, and they all knew each other, and you guys were all buddies.
Yeah.
But just to put it in perspective, between Turtles and Star Trek in those days, you guys were pumping out, and I mean that in the best possible way, hundreds of figures a year. So it didn't matter. And this is not a Star Trek panel, but you guys created a lot of history with those because you were creating portrait heads without the benefit of digital information, scans, and it's what made Trek. So.
I still have a case of all of those heads. I've got them all lined up.
Oh, that's cool.
So, this is Howard.
Okay. My name is Howard Chang. I joined Steve Varner in Mosquito when I was 18 years old. My mom, she's right back there, she wanted me to get a summer job. And I just went in, I could draw a little, right? So I came in and started as a mold maker and got me onto just testing a figure out. Next thing you know, I ended up doing like hundreds of poses and designs.
Tons of drawings.
And even today, that's all I can draw. My little kids are here. They ask me to draw something. All I can do is just turtle heads.
So your summer job turned into making Ninja Turtles toys. That's
And 8 years. It lasted 8 years.
8 years. 8 year long
It was
summer.
an 8-year-long summer.
That was sort of the history at Varner Studios. Is we would hire somebody as one thing, and then we need them for something else, and all of a sudden they turn into a sculptor or an illustrator, and
And you guys, when you go there, it was like going to the circus because everybody had their, I don't know, the various nicknames.
right.
Quigley, Giant Boy, Giant Girl, I don't know, it was...
Gnarly.
It was the Carnies.
It was a family. It was a family. Varner Studios.
But the first time I've hooked up with Quigley, it's probably 20 years or whatever, and we're going to use them on Turtles again on design work, so that's great.
Can I get paid this time?
Now you mention it.
Now you're not going to get paid.
Well, why don't we go ahead and then just start right there at the beginning? You've got that awesome the original sculpt right there, Ninja Turtles. So let's go all the way back to the beginning when this all started and tell us about what it's like piecing together this Ninja Turtles toy line for the first time.
Well, in late 1986, there was kind of a lull in the toy industry. And, I had my guys at my house painting and things like that just to try to get things going. And John Handy was at Playmates at the time. And he called me in and he said, well, I've got this project. And he shows me this black and white comic book. And he said, we just want to see what your take is on this. Because we like the story. We don't really think that this is marketable. The visuals the way it is. So, do something with it. So I went in and I didn't really think very much of it. I was like, okay. So I go back and I started doing a clay sketch, and the more I got into it, I'm going, this is really cool. And the kind of the good thing is there was a void in the market, and people were really needed something different. So that's kind of how it started. It just took off from there. Although Carl says the retailers weren't that receptive at the time.
Well, Steve was working away, and then later Greg and Ed, and when we first started putting together our internal presentations, it was kind of falling flat. Not because of anything they did, because they were always the secret sauce, but a lot of the core turtle elements, the camaraderie and all of that, which a lot of that obviously stems from the comic books and then later the TV show, just weren't apparent. And it wasn't until much later, especially after we went on a road show and presented to our retailers, and it was fairly awful reception, One of the biggies kicked us out and said, stick to preschool toys, you guys don't know what you're doing.
Wow.
That we realized, believe me, we've held over their heads for 25 years. Realized that, you know what, the secret of turtles, of course, you know, besides those personalities, is the humor, and we were not stressing the humor enough. That was the point of difference, and maybe other than Ghostbusters, there was no other action figure line, almost before or since, that had that, achieved that delicate balance between the humor and the action. And once we kind of came to that conclusion, then it was much smoother, and especially, of course, once the animation hit, it became pretty apparent. So from that point forward, it got a little bit better. Toy Fair, February of '88, better, and then when it hit shelves, fall of '88, it pretty much took off from day one. Although we did have a wall of April O'Neil's on the shelf for a while.
Awesome. So, how about Peter Laird, Kevin Eastman? What kind of involvement did they have in the toy line itself? Did they have any input in it, or did they have to approve anything? Did all this have to go through them in the beginning?
Always had to go through them, at least concept, and they were very involved, especially at the beginning, and especially with the TV show. And as much as Peter always really, I think personally hated the wackier, goofier elements of the TV show, they were absolutely involved every step of the way. And we would have our annual kind of trip to Mecca, going up to Northampton, Massachusetts, with all the concepts for the following year, and do this whole presentation to Pete and Kevin. And they put in their 2 cents. They reject some things, they comment on others, but I can say genuinely these were 2 really good guys who would have been incredibly happy just to have a successful comic book, and that was it. They weren't looking to build an empire by any means. It just kind of organically happened. But no, I mean, they were always involved. But you know what? Ideas for this toy line from day one, it came from a myriad of different sources. Kevin and Peter, for sure. Their guys, for sure. And even when one of their artists came up with something, Pete and Kevin would pay them a royalty, which I thought was really cool of them to do. All these guys.
Hey, we didn't get that.
Scratch that last remark. Obviously, a lot of ideas came from these guys, came from internally at Playmates, but it's like there was no, not invent here syndrome. It was like, hey, if it's a good idea, it's a good idea. And of course, the TV show came up with a lot of stuff too. But you got to give credit for the overall Turtles thing. Besides Kevin and Peter, Fred Wolf, the original TV show, because he definitely added a lot of kid-friendly elements that just weren't there before. Did it fall into kind of a formulaic rut at some point? Yeah, it did. But overall, Fred was as integral to the whole thing as anybody.
So, why don't we go ahead and talk about the design process then a little bit? You mentioned to me before that you guys worked on the original set of heroes, right? The original hero characters. So, how did you guys kind of come up with your designs? What was the process of bringing these guys to life from those original comic books into an action figure line for kids?
Well, I was actually in charge of the design department. It was me and then 3 other illustrators. Howard was our #1 illustrator.
First one.
Carl would call me, and they'd send some drawings sometimes. Sometimes Carl would just throw out ideas, and then Steve and Howard and I, and then Russ later on, Russ Lossler.
I remember the first line.
Van, all these, yeah. So
the first time we started getting into design, I was mold making in that, and he told me to come sit down for a minute. I know you can draw some.
Because I knew you were a good illustrator.
So they had a Usagi Ojimbo character. They wanted to make it the cycle and robotic stuff. I had it here somewhere. But then I started drawing it, and then did a couple of revisions, and I got out of the mold department real quick, and they put me in my own office in the back with air conditioning. After the summer, I was supposed to go to college, start college, freshman year, and they did everything they can to get me from going to college.
Yeah, we hired a pretty girl.
You don't want to go to college. People graduate college to be in this situation. Somehow I got out of it, and
You guys don't take that as a life lesson.
I'm starting to
Although
whittle
I don't
that
know
down.
about in this day and age.
That's how the whole design process started, at least sketching out of it.
Cool. Awesome.
And usually Carl or somebody would just say like, you know, fireman turtle or
Yeah,
Air
exactly.
Force turtle or whatever, and then you just take it from there.
Here's that Usagi Ojimbo, I was like 19.
Wow.
Space Usagi.
That's the first one,
Yeah,
right?
Usagi was the first character I ever sculpted for the line myself.
Yeah, I mean, it started off, and you guys know how, I mean, you guys, most of you know how it works, but you start off by taking things from the TV show, from the comic books, from the minds of Kevin and Peter, but we worked through that pretty quickly, so collectively, we started really creating our own original characters, and, you know, we'd always focus on anthropomorphic animals. What animals haven't we covered? How do you then connect that or combine that with a great kid-friendly theme that we haven't touched upon before? Hopefully some relation between the animal and what the theme was. And then these guys would go to town. And I will say, and without blowing smoke, there were sculptors out there before this, and this is before the Todd McFarlanes and all that, but there were sculptors out there before that saw the whole process as being a job, plain and simple. These guys, I think, were the first ones to really make it a combination of fine art with action figure. And so, and you know, the only credit we should get, I think, is we were patient enough and maybe pushed enough to say, listen, instead of 4 weeks, maybe it's going to take 6 or 8 weeks to finish that figure, but you know what? It's going to have layers upon layers of detail that you would have never achieved before then. So they took, I mean, they were so passionate about what they were doing that it elevated, I think, the whole thing. And that's true whether it was Turtles or Star Trek or Exo Squad or whatever. So again, I think that was the secret to the success of all these.
But we were lucky enough that he was very permissive in that, for instance, day starts, my son, he was 8, and he's like, Dad, what do you think of a head-popping turtle? So I call him, and he says, well, somebody already submitted it, but they couldn't do it right. Let me send you what they did and see if you can perfect it. So, you know.
Also didn't pay him for that either.
But it looks like Howard. He did the drawing on it. It's very reminiscent of him. I don't know if you can see that. It looks like Howard. There we go. Or another story is he gave me a call and he said he wanted to do sports balls with turtles, and again nothing had been drawn, and somebody at work was telling him, how about a ball rather that has nothing but turtle shell, and then we stick faces on there of each one. And something popped into my head when he started telling me this. I imagined when you jump into a swimming pool and do the cannonball thing. I said, what do you think of that? He goes, do it, do it. So, of course, I had to come up with 4 different poses. I happen to have the original wax of, well, a few of them.
If any of you saw the He-Man panel last year, this is Eddie's magical box of toys.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
And
And we did a football too.
yeah, we did a football.
Which actually threw really good.
Oh yeah, it did.
Like an animal.
As long as it doesn't hit you in the face, it was okay.
See, Ed makes it sound so simple,
Well,
but the process took a long time.
yeah.
Oh, look at
Here it
that.
is. There he is doing that cannonball. This is the original wax. California state law allows us to keep our original stuff. Yeah, this is the original stuff.
Eventually, we sold the same idea to.
Oh, the
Warner
concept.
Brothers.
Yeah, but I mean, it was my, it was my concept to do it like this. It was. He begs to differ. Thank you. Anyway, there's a clay one in there too. But,
You're not going to show us?
okay, I'll show you.
Attaboy,
I
Dan.
have, Raph here, and this was Dawn.
You gonna pass it around?
Yeah, we'll see if that ends up back up.
It won't make it past the first row.
Say something, Leo. There we go. So I thought I'd share those.
Yeah, very cool.
Is the camera picking it up?
Oh, there's Well, there's plenty of cameras snapping right now,
Oh,
so
okay,
somebody's
there
got
we
it.
Snapping turtles.
Dun-dun-dun.
Do you guys want to touch upon just the process in those days versus, you know, in particular what you're doing in the digital front now? I mean,
It's like night and day. It's totally different, actually. I mean, we were much more involved, I think, in the whole development of everything back then, and it was a much longer process. And we were always asked to put more grimace and turtle texture on everything. But,
And not so bold-legged.
right, not so,
That was another one that was not so
Even
bold-legged.
drawing, it was like, you draw a character, and the grimace is wrong, try the whole thing over again, redraw
Right.
it with the right grimace.
Yeah.
Nowadays,
design around
Yeah,
the grimace
now we-
quickly.
Now we have
white
computers,
tables
you
and all
can
that.
just-
And I brought the first computer to run a school, said,
Yeah.
he was opposed to it, I need to get a Mac.
Wow.
I think I used my student discount for the first one.
now in
Thanks for
particular,
sharing that.
now in particular, everything I do is digital. I never sculpt up with my hands. It's all, well, my hands,
Your
but
hands,
not, I don't get dirty.
It's just, I mean, that's just the way the industry is.
It's the way the
It's
industry
taken,
is.
it's taken that turn,
Yeah.
and everything's digital now.
Yeah, and now
it's
if the
a lot
grimace
different.
is wrong, I just tug it till it's right.
Except for me, I'm still a caveman. Speaking of,
And we
here's-
keep telling you.
Oh, look at this transition.
Yeah.
Speaking of cavemen.
Yeah, I was in charge
Wow.
of caveman, and this one I sculpted myself.
I should have brought the dinosaur. I still have the wax.
Yeah, he asks me for the dinosaur all the time. Where's my ride, he says.
Did he go with,
Just-
which
just a
one
tool
did he
and
go
cup.
with, the brontosaurus or the?
Yeah, I believe so.
It's interesting because prehistoric turtles have always been popular.
They're cool.
Yeah, just every time we do it, it's incredibly popular.
I think that's actually a good topic. Let's talk about all of those crazy variants that the Ninja Turtles went through in that old toy line. Some of them were wackier than others, obviously. What's kind of like, how did you come up with those concepts? And like, what was the idea behind that? Obviously, it's the main four. You wanted to keep the main four out at all times, but keep them fresh.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were probably one of the first ones, if not the first ones, to start segmenting the business and come up with multiple, you know, iterations with different themes, different features. You know, obviously some from the show, some from the comic book, but then it was a matter of, okay, what Turtles in some ways is the Barbie of action figures, meaning they're so malleable you can almost apply anything to them and it works within reason. So we looked at classic genres, classic action themes, things that might be topical, meaning popular at the time, like Troll Turtles, which did very well. What can I say?
Which we did not sculpt earlier. I didn't want to.
The one they didn't do.
I didn't want to do that.
And then, you know, and some were definitely more with collectors in minds, like the Trek Turtles, and we happen to have both licenses.
Oh, well, there you go.
Asking the shall
I'm in
receive.
charge of these guys.
Universal Monster Turtles, which did very well. And then,
WWF.
no, not WWF.
Sorry.
Have a look at the wrestling turtle. And then the ones that are at least Nickelodeon thinks is when we jump the shark. Anybody want to take a guess on that one? Which one?
Farm turtles?
Which one?
Clown or farm turtles?
How dare you, Michelle? The John Deere crowd loved those figures. No, the Bodacious Birthday Turtles.
Oh.
Because, you know, kids have birthdays all the time, and why wouldn't you have a birthday-themed turtle with a noisemaker built into its head? Yeah, that's probably when we jumped the shark. And so it really was having enough concepts in the works that these guys would have something to work on and keep it fresh. And, you know, the one thing about Turtles is we never, other than the collector-specific things, which you guys know most of it wasn't, we never retired anything. Unless it was a complete dog, we didn't retire a figure, it could always come back. So, you know, by the end, I don't know how many, we had a couple hundred figures to flow in and out of those assortments. So, but it was a lot of fun, other than the Bodacious Birthday.
Do you know?
No, I did not.
He doesn't want to take credit for the video. I think he did.
I did not do those soft.
He embraced it.
I embraced it.
And the other beautiful thing about Turtles, I think, was we had comic book guys who would, on the fly, put together this organization, and, you know, of course, it became this huge behemoth thing. They never created a style guide, nothing. So it wasn't like your typical studio relationship where, hey, that line is a little off, that's not Mickey Mouse anymore. So Turtles, and you guys know it, I mean, you see it from series to series, from figure to figure, were quite different, which is completely against all the rules. But these guys would, you know, add their creative stamp to every one of these figures, and I think it allowed it to have longevity much longer than it would have otherwise, because every figure felt a little different, a little fresher, versus just taking that same underlying figure and just throwing some clothing on it.
Right.
So, you know, it kept it fresh.
Yeah, I mean, the original Turtles, the Toon Turtles, the movie Turtles.
Pizza tossing,
But
looked like Big Daddy Roth.
those three were all different, totally different looks.
Yeah.
And you could do everything that you did with the other ones with those, basically.
And Kevin and Peter were very cool about, hey, you know, just go for it. You know, they would comment, but they were very open to try and do things.
Awesome.
Which was good.
Well, I think we should play show and tell because you guys have all been back here rustling around in boxes and stuff, and I know that everybody loves seeing this kind of stuff. So I want to start down with Howard at the end. You've got a lot of great pieces of artwork there. Would you mind kind of flipping through some of that and kind of telling us what it is?
These are really like 23 years old, 22 years old. There's just some of them. Sheriff Turtle.
That was probably when Carl would just call and say, you know, cop turtle.
Yeah, cop turtle. Yup, donuts in the bottom, pizza, coffee. You got a basketball turtle, number 23.
Oh, nice.
Very Michael Jordan-esque.
Yeah, these are just like rough. But here's the song. It was 92. I don't know why these were drawn, but
Classic.
classic poses, just some different poses with the new turtle.
The other thing you guys will notice is, unlike a lot of toy companies, they weren't going even into control drawings most of the time. Most of the time, you guys were taking these B sheets, whatever you want to call them, concept designs, and going right into sculpture.
This is
Because you can make up the back or the side.
This is a marine turtle, looks like a Saddam Hussein turtle.
Saddam Hussein turtle. A Saddam Hussein turtle.
This is
Didn't do that.
this is a drawing that Russ did. Russ was another artist.
Here's one of Russ's originals.
He did the, yeah.
Caveman.
And one of my, this is a military sort of, I don't know if this was ever made. The nerd.
I don't think so.
The nerd.
Turtle.
You guys can see this?
Wait, let me see that one.
You can see this? So it has braces.
I don't remember that
I
one.
think he's got check it out.
Green. They have
It's just
green
a
pimples.
No, we did not do this one.
He has a giant pencil and a giant calculator. Why would
You can toss it around.
For those of you who don't know what a calculator or a pencil are, we'll explain that.
Yeah.
And then here's some military stuff. I mean, it's got a lot of fun. This is one of my favorites, though. It's the Navy SEAL turtle. No, that's
Military turtles were one of the most popular. Sports turtles were some of the most popular. Number one theme for turtles outside the core, mutation turtles. That was the biggest by far.
Yeah.
And the micro turtles actually also were pretty huge. Sports, military,
They
big.
did rock, remember, like a rock.
Rock and roll did well, not as big as sports and military.
One was a rapper, and one was a rockster, one was like, they're four, but.
every possible way to make a turtle.
Yeah, but you know, I'm the first to say we went to the well once too often when we did like World War I, Bebop, and Leo, and yeah, it was like, I'm sure the kids were just dying for those.
I do remember my idol back then. If you're an artist in the early '90s, it's Jim Lee.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to just read all his comic books, and I got a fax one day from Jim Lee. It was a Jim Lee Ninja Turtle. Like, hey, that's Jim Lee faxing stuff over to me. What am I gonna do with these? Just clean it up, color it. He was sent just rough drafts, and I was lucky enough to just clean it up and add some color to it.
He redrew them.
Add some stuff to it. And,
So Playmates was doing Wildcats at the time, Jim Lee's creation, and so we had that relationship. We wanted to design some turtles, and it was pretty counter to everything we did with turtles, which was always kind of soft and goofy and silly. It was like, no, we'll do some kind of classic superhero proportions. And, yeah, you guys did an amazing job.
It's fun. You know, a lot of fun doing it.
Awesome. So we're digging out more goodies.
Steve is bringing out those
The Jim Lee turtles.
The Jim Lee. And by the way, did he only give us 3?
4.
Yeah, but-
4. All 3
Did we do?
We
Wait,
did 4.
The fourth one didn't come out.
Yeah, one of them never came out.
one didn't come out.
Leonardo didn't come out.
And I had one that didn't come out.
Steve has the one with him. He should.
Wait, we didn't make?
Now he's on the Zark. We didn't make it.
No, I mean,
It's like, wait, what?
We drew it and all that, but it was never.
Yeah, I think I don't
Oh,
have this.
wow.
This guy.
Could that be?
was awesome.
Is that the one that wasn't?
No, Cyber
That's
Samurai.
not- that's
Samurai
not-
Cyber.
That's
Oh, I thought, okay, I'm confused.
That was my favorite.
Did you bring any other stuff in your bag? Yes, same exact
Jeez, they
time
fight
that I
like an
do.
old married couple.
Everybody's on pins and needles. What's he
What's
gonna
it?
pull out next?
Out of
This
his
is
married.
exactly how all our meetings take place.
Yeah. Then it would be like, focus.
Oh, nice.
Movie turtles.
I brought one too.
This
Oh, you
is
did?
Movie one.
Movie star
Oh, but you
turtles.
have-
I have a painted one. Ooh.
We just getting this together this morning. I was over there.
I mean, there's like piles of these on my desk.
Here's a painted version of what. This is Dawn, my favorite turtle.
I think you guys came up with the idea of the real reptilian field, didn't you? Which was basically soft PVC, but it sounded great.
Yeah. I mean, I think
The
we're the ones that
textures
just sort of came up with it as we were
I gotta get those
sculpting.
fingers.
A little bit of news, we are coming out with the movie One Turtles again in the 6-inch format next year, based on the Jim Henson original costumes, which these were executed before we even had any much reference, but so just FYI.
They are nice.
Right, sir?
Yeah, I see what you got there.
Love this character.
This guy here.
Triceratops.
Oh, yeah.
He was fun to do.
Don't be surprised if you see that character come back at some point.
Cool.
Dun dun dun.
Everybody's like,
You think you're
They,
gonna talk him into working?
I think you're gonna, now that the new show's been established, I think the sensitivity to bringing back iconic characters has.
They dropped the same news over on the new Turtles
Banner.
cartoon panel that we just got done.
Oh, excellent.
They mentioned Triceratops, so.
Because I thought about it.
That's 2 panels in a row. Triceratops reference.
Oh,
So why don't we go ahead and you guys keep pulling out your cool stuff.
oh, okay.
But let's also talk about the current Turtles toy line.
Oh, yeah.
What you guys are doing with that now. Yeah.
I did. I happened to bring 2 of them with me.
Oh, good.
And
So,
Don,
I guess I can start with, from
Don's also doing
the TV show side.
Oh,
Again, usually I just wouldn't mention it if it wasn't true. Nickelodeon has generally done an amazing job, I think, with this new TV show. I think the hardest part was coming up with a new creative vision for Turtles that didn't have a lot of baggage from the 80s, which I know a lot of us in here say, well, what's the baggage? Well, for a new generation of kids, a new take on it just was important. And the creative director, Ciro, was an original Turtle fan, and he was, had his stubborn creative vision for it that he stuck to, and rightfully so. I mean, he has done an amazing job of bringing it to life with a new stylistic approach, both to the environments as well as the characters themselves, but still somehow hit that fine line between retaining the essence of Turtles and what makes them Turtles, and giving it, bless you, a fresh new feel. And so it all starts with Nickelodeon doing an amazing job, I think, on this TV show. Different look, high production values, fun scripts. It works. And in some ways, I think it's the best version of Turtles. So that is what launched this whole new turtle line. And yes, we worked closely with Nickelodeon, and probably one of the few times where we knew more about the property than the studio, but they definitely did their job. And they did their job in terms of putting this new Turtles on the map. And it is the first time we've ever experienced the phenomenon, this with Turtles, of multi-generations flocking to it, meaning parents who now have young kids are original fans, and we had never run across that before. We always get asked, you guys don't really target the collectors that much. Honestly, there wasn't much of a collector market for Turtles, respective or versus the He-Mans of the world. There just wasn't that big until this time around, and now we're seeing it. So from the Playmates perspective, you'll be seeing more and more from us on the collector front, because clearly there's a demand for it. But anyway, sorry. So going back to it, Nickelodeon started developing the show. These guys did their thing, and the only thing I'll say, and I'll shut up and let you guys talk, is we decided from day one, it's like, you know what, we want Ed and Steve to work on these 4 Turtles, even though they weren't in the same studio anymore. So we said, listen, 2 for you, 2 for you. You guys work together so that these all look like it's literally from 2 different guys. And
then we got to work with Ciro too.
yeah, so go from there in terms of, it's...
Yeah, Ciro really did have a vision for this, but he was a little bit receptive to some of our ideas.
I think just the fact that you bulked them up, and the heads were maybe slightly larger than what was in the show, and weren't quite as faceted. All those things he seemed to embrace.
He seemed to go with, and he felt that the toy line didn't have to be exactly like the TV show. At some point, then you make it like the TV show. Yeah, it's as a different line.
And it's the first time I've ever run into the case where the animators are actually much more accepting of new ideas than maybe anybody else who works in the show. Because they were original Turtle fans. Like, yeah, I love when you used to do the wacky stuff.
And we got to be in the meetings with them. So that, I think that really,
No, it's a great team. It was just a great team of people. And you guys, you've seen it in the panels with the voice cast. But everybody that works on this, and I don't know if they just happen to good people happen to gravitate towards the property, or the property itself just gives you this vibe, this karma about having fun and not taking stuff too seriously. But everybody just kind of gets along. It's real interesting, and it's always kind of been this way. But this time, the stakes were so high, and everybody just kind of works together. It's a great experience working on this one.
And I think the articulation that you guys let us do this time really makes a difference.
Steve came up with this articulation pretty much. I've got to give him the credit.
These guys really moved right.
Yeah, you did a fantastic job, and I was really happy that Steve pretty much did the first one of this style. And he created it so that he gave me 2 blanks.
Well,
and then I could
make digital. So
I could do a
just
larger
print
one.
it out.
I could do a larger one and a smaller one. And this guy, again, being the same guy he was back in the 80s and 90s, allowed some permissiveness, if you will, because Steve nailed this originally as Ciro and Nickelodeon were doing. It looked identical to that stuff. And I called Carl and I said, Carl, it's lacking muscle, it's lacking,
it's not heroic
all that
enough.
stuff.
Yeah.
And then Carl says, okay, I'll tell you what, because I said, can you